Hooking up PCs. So we're going to start learning about PCs, which is what our primary goal is here today. This is the most important lesson of the entire year. Everything else is built on today. If you don't learn today, you're hosed. Okay, now today is the introduction to every single part of a PC, okay? All these different parts so that our today's goal, understand the purposes of the primary computer PC parts, okay? This is an overview, a very basic overview of every single chapter that is to follow in this course, okay? So when I give you the basic overview, realize there's going to be a whole lot more information than this that you're going to learn throughout the course about all these parts, okay? And this is the list of parts. We're going to do individual slides and stuff, and I'm going to write down stuff on these individual ones. And I obviously am recording this today because we've got a student in the hospital that hopefully second block will be able to watch this, or he might be home by now. Is he home by now? I don't know. Anyway, so that's our primary objective. So we're going to walk through all these parts. There may be some that I actually missed on this one, but we'll see. These are the most important ones when we're looking at the inside of the PC. Okay. The first part, the most important part, the motherboard, is the mother of all other parts. If it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. If it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. If it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. How many times did I say that? 3. So if I was to ask a question on a test, if it's not connected to the blank, it's not part of the PC, you would say? Motherboard. Motherboard, yes, that's what you'd say, because the motherboard is the circulatory system, it's the nervous system, it's whatever you want to think of it as, whether it's a bloodstream or the nervous system, whatever, it's what connects everything together. If it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. Okay? When we go to use a USB thumb drive, do we connect it to the motherboard? Yeah. Yes, we do. Okay? Many times it plugs directly in, and this back panel connectors back here on the back of the motherboard are USB connection ports. You're connecting it straight into the motherboard. The ones that are on the front of a PC actually are little plugs in the front that run a wire to a USB header that's plugged in directly to the motherboard. Okay? Everything is connected to the motherboard. It drives everything. It doesn't do our computations, but if it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. Have I said that yet? Okay, everything connects to the motherboard. And the motherboard is what transfers all information. If I have a really fast computer, CPU, because everybody thinks of the CPU as the brains of the computer, and if it's really fast, and this is really slow in comparison, do I overall have a fast computer? And the answer is no. Because if the information can't get to my screen, if I've got a really fast CPU, which is the brains, and I've got a really slow motherboard, and I'm playing this game and it can't put the video out there for me to see that I just got shot or a dragon's over my head blowing fire, and all of a sudden I see the dragon, there it is, I'm dead! Okay, that's not a good PC. Okay? So you wouldn't want to play Skyrim with a crummy motherboard. Anybody play Skyrim? Yes. Yes, excellent, excellent. Okay, so motherboard, everything connects to the motherboard. How do I undo my... That's what I want. Okay, so during the course section on motherboards, that's the first real section that we do. We're going to learn every single thing that's on that picture. I will have, in your test, I will say, where do I plug in a PCI card? Okay, now on this one, it says, labeled, PCI Express, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it has all those things labeled, okay? But you will need, one of the I can statements for motherboards is, I can look at a motherboard and identify all the parts. That means every part. I need to be able to say, well, all these label things that are on here now, by the time we're done with motherboards, you will know. You will be able to look at a motherboard, and I will be able to show you a picture of a motherboard, and I will be able to say, don't drop the keyboard, I will be able to say, where does the memory go? And without fail, you will say the memory goes right there, Mr. Poole. Of course it goes right there. It's an ATX motherboard, and it's always aligned with back panel CPU memory. That's why ATX is aligned. And right now you're going, I don't know what you're saying, Mr. Poole. But you will! Okay? So, everything connects to the motherboard. We need to be able to identify all these parts by the end of the section on motherboards. Because when we move on and we start talking about the parts that plug in here, and the parts that plug in here, and the parts that plug in here, the parts that plug in here, we already need to know where they plug into. Okay, so if it's not connected to the motherboard, it's not part of the PC. It is the backbone of the entire PC. Everything plugs into it, okay? So it's very important. The motherboard is very important. So the number one thing that plugs into it is the CPU, which we're going to talk about next, okay? That's the brains of the operation. That's where the majority of computations take place, okay? The CPU plugs into the motherboard. The motherboard's fastest socket is that CPU socket, okay? And then from there it connects up to our memory, which is our second most important thing, also referred to as RAM. We're going to talk more when we get to that slide here in a minute. But these are the most important two things that are connected to the motherboard. And then we have things like our hard drive connected to our motherboard, and we have our video card sometimes integrated on our motherboard, okay? But everything else of importance connects to the motherboard. It's what brings it all together, okay? And I will tell you that when I look at a motherboard, these things are not universal in that I can't plug, this is where the CPU goes in my motherboard, okay? And by the way, on an ATX, we're going to talk about form factor when we get there. That's called a form factor. It's always aligned, back panel CPU memory, okay? So anyway, here's the CPU, and they're not all the same. We have to make sure that we buy a motherboard, we buy the CPU that plugs into that motherboard. There's a bunch of different CPU sockets, okay? So not only does this connect everything, they're not all universal plugs. There's not just one socket that goes into here. There's many, many, many different sockets to go into there. So when I build a PC, not only do they all connect, but they all have to connect correctly, okay? All memory will not go in there. There's still 4 kinds of memory sold today, okay? Well, there's actually more than that. The 4 main kinds of memory sold today, and this will only take one of them. And can I actually tell that from looking at this picture? Well, if this wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to. Okay. But I know that this one is DDR memory slot. There's DDR, there's DDR2, there's DDR3, there's SD-RAM. Those are all still sold today, although SD-RAM is really so you would never want to buy it. Anyway, so I need to make sure I get the right kind of memory to go in that socket on the motherboard. Other things are more universal. Hard drives are more universal. The expansion slots are more universal. But these two things, the memory and the CPU, work together in sync, and they have to match that motherboard. Okay? So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. In our first project that you guys do, first one that you guys actually accomplished, is on selling us a motherboard. Okay? You're going to show me 3 different kind of motherboards. One for a business, one for home use, and one for a gamer. And they're going to have different specifications that you guys are going to build all the other projects on. Okay, so that's the motherboard. It has screws that go in. No, I'll hold one up. It's easier to show. Okay, that are very specific where these screw holes are, so that that matches up with the case that I put it in, because they're not all the same. Okay, so not only does the CPU have to match the socket on the motherboard, the memory has to match the slots, but this has to be able to screw into the case that we buy, and the power supply has to be able to plug that in. And that's all stuff that we're going to learn when we're in the appropriate section, okay? So that's the motherboard. The next most important thing is the CPU, okay? Anybody know what CPU stands for?
Central Processing Unit.
Okay. Central Processing Unit. It is the brains, okay? It's where the majority, not all, majority of the processing or computations take place in our PC. And it's what most people think of as the speed of a PC. If you go to Walmart, okay, it's going to say something like 2.4 gigahertz processor. And you're like, oh, that's pretty good, I'll take that, okay? But that is just one part of the CPU equation. In fact, that's the one that everybody sees. But there are 2 other parts that are more important in many aspects than just that. But that's the easy number, okay? How many gigahertz is it? This is a 2 point, I don't know what this one is. The one that used to be here is 2.8. I don't know what that one is at all. This one's 1.8. But does that mean that one is better than that one? Not necessarily, because CPUs not only have a computational speed, okay? And this is what most people think of as the speed. But they also have, anymore, a number of cores. Cores means how many processors are actually on that CPU. And we're up to 8. You've got to have 8 processors on one CPU. Not only could you have 8 processors, they can be hyper-threaded, which means 16 effective processors on one CPU. So if this one's 2.4 single core and this is 1.8 quad core, who wins? 1.8 quad core does, some of the time, not all the time. Okay? And we have one other thing that you guys probably have never heard of, and that is cache. Okay? And cache is C-A-C-H-E, which is memory on the CPU. Lots of people don't know there's memory on the CPU. That is one of the biggest things that affects how fast this thing works. Because when I go back here to my motherboard, I got the CPU plugged in right here. I got the memory plugged in right there. CPU going 2.4 gigahertz. Fastest memory going 1600 megahertz, which is 1.6 gigahertz. Who's faster? CPU, 2.4 bigger than 1.6, okay? That's actually a really poor set of numbers because that's pretty close. You have some that are like this is less than half of this. CPUs are easily double the speed of our memory. Now, if our CPU has memory on it, it doesn't have to go out here to the slow memory on the board as much. So when we talk about CPUs, and we're going to obviously talk about this more later, we're going to talk about the cache. I don't like the way I wrote that. I'm going to rewrite cache because it's hard to read what I wrote there. C-A-C-H-E. Cache, which is memory on the CPU. The more of that there is, the faster the computer runs. So if I tell you this one's 2.4 and this is 1.8, and this has got 8 times the memory on the CPU than this one does, that one's going to probably run faster. Okay, so you can't just look at this number, although that's what you see at Walmart. That's what you see at Best Buy. You'll see a big thing saying what the gigahertz of the processor is. You may not see anything saying how many cores, although they're getting better about that. And you almost never see how much cache it has, which is one of the things that divides these things up. Okay, Intel is one of the makers of CPUs. Okay, and they used to have, because we're really not there anymore, but they used to have Pentium 4s, right? Yeah. And they used to have Celeron, and they were both 2.4 gigahertz. This is what the last thing I bought, okay, from a company. Okay, the last time I bought something new. They had Pentium 4s that are 2.4 gigahertz and Celerons that are 2.4 gigahertz. And they both sound like they're the same speed, okay? But the C in Celeron stood for crap, because what they really did is they put 1/4 of the memory on this CPU and acted like it was the same thing. And this CPU that had the same effective speed as that CPU ran so much faster, it was crazy. Okay? But they would sell you that and they'd say, oh, it's got a 2.4 gigahertz Celeron CPU, and you're like, all right! And then you get it home and you go, this sucks, okay? So that cache really matters, and it's something we'll talk about more when we get there. Okay?
Did the two principal laptops have different drives in them? Because they're not imaging. Like, are they smaller than?
I have absolutely no idea.
I'm just gonna open it and find out.
Yeah, you might have to, and you might have to put a bigger drive in.
Okay.
I don't know. I would think they would be bigger drives, but I don't know.
And those network cards didn't work either.
Optimal burning off. Okay, so that's the CPU. It's where the processing takes place. We're going to talk a lot more about that. The second project you guys will do will be to sell us CPUs that go for your motherboards that you sold us on the first project. Okay, so we kind of work our way through this. So that's the CPU. It's the brains of the... Oh, and by the way, with CPUs, there's 2 CPU manufacturers. Manufacturers, which we'll talk more about later. I don't know if I spelled that right, but anyway, do you know what the 2 are? You don't have to know. I'm just seeing what you do know. What do you know? What you know?
Intel.
Intel. Okay, Intel's the big one. Okay, Intel is a big one that everybody knows about. They've got tons of advertising everywhere. Okay. There's another one though. Anybody know what the other one is?
AMD.
AMD, right? AMD. Okay. AMD is the other processor manufacturer that used to just make memory, and Intel got them into the processor business, and then broke contract with them, and had to pay them $1 billion in broken contract negotiations afterwards. Okay. Intel is the only manufacturer. IBM required Intel to have somebody else that made CPUs, so Intel subcontracted with AMD and got them making processors, and then IBM said, we don't really need two processor manufacturers, and Intel said, ah, too bad I don't need you anymore, and AMD said, we got a contract. And they sued them and they got $1 billion. So they make CPUs too. They make very good CPUs, but you don't see advertisements on them. Okay, my CPU at home is an AMD. I can get way more speed on it than I could on Intel for the same price. You guys will see that because one of you guys, since there's only two of you, will be forced to do Intel stuff, and one of you will be forced to do AMD, and you'll be able to see when you look at it, hey, here's my gamer CPU, and I got this and this and this for $200, and he's going to go, here's my gamer CPU, I got the same thing, it's $1,200. You're going to be like, oh, okay. Now, that doesn't mean this one's faster than this one. It goes back and forth. Sometimes Intel's better, sometimes AMD better. It depends on where they are in their research and what they're making right now. And right now, Intel is a little bit faster. But for the same speed of processor, AMD is usually about half the price. We'll see that when you guys do your, so. Okay, then we got memory, and we got lots of kinds of memory. We got tons of manufacturers of memory. Memory is where data and instructions are stored by the CPU. CPU writes stuff to memory and reads stuff from memory. Okay, it's where it keeps it's the notepad of the CPU. Okay, if you were a computer, okay, you have some internal memory. Okay, that's your cache memory, but you don't remember everything, so you write it down in your notebook. Is it faster to pull something from your notebook or from your noggin? Noggin, right? So this is slower than cache memory. However, comparing this to a hard drive, this is multiples times faster than hard drive, because it also hard drive is also where data and instructions are stored. But if the CPU can just use cache or use RAM for random access memory, it can use RAM or its own cache. It will be way faster than if it ever goes out to a hard drive. There's different kinds of memory. Okay, it's all, I'm going to use a bad term, it's all SDRAM, which we'll talk about more later. Okay, and SDRAM has two notches, and then it became DDR, which stood for double data rate SDRAM. Okay, and that only has one notch, but then they made DDR2 and DDR3, and the notch moved, but the notch moved like this much. So when I look at a stick, I can't just say it's DDR2. I would need a measuring tape that goes down to the millimeters. I have to actually hold them up next to each other and go, this is 1, this must be 2. Okay, and they moved that little notch so that you couldn't put DDR into a DDR2 motherboard or DDR3 into a DDR motherboard. Okay, so and I keep them all separated, and we'll see how to figure that out. But my point is that it got, as it speeded up, it was SDRAM. They made it faster, double data rate, but double of this. And then they came out with DDR2, which wasn't double of DDR1. It's just faster than DDR1. They couldn't call it DDR1 anymore, so they called it DDR2, and then it got faster, and they called it DDR3, which is what you want in your gamer PC right now. I don't have it. I have DDR2 still at home. But DDR3 is now the fastest. It just continues to evolve. And your motherboard can only take one kind. It'll only take DDR2, or only take DDR, or only take DDR3. Okay, and they're of different speeds, and we're going to learn what those are, and I'm not going to write all this down. But memory is where the data and instructions are stored by the CPU while it's working. Okay, memory is, that's supposed to be an E. I don't know how that, or a Y. No, it's supposed to be a Y. Memory is storage by the CPU, okay? It's also called primary storage. And this is in terms of to the CPU, okay? You can't store anything in memory. CPU does stuff and it stores stuff in memory. So memory is primary storage, but primary storage to the CPU. Where do you store stuff? When you hit save, where does it go to? Goes to your hard drive or goes to your USB flash drive. You're putting it on permanent storage. You don't save to here. Primary storage, primary to CPU, and it's also, it's an E, temporary or volatile. In other words, it goes away. Okay, you turn off your PC, the stuff in memory goes away. Boop, it's gone. Okay, when you restart your PC, if your PC is acting wonky, you restart it, all of a sudden it works. Could have been because there was some bad stuff in memory. You just cleared it out when you restart your PC. Okay. Every once in a while, especially with a Microsoft operating system, we have to restart the server because all of a sudden it's acting weird. You restart it and all of a sudden it's fine. Okay, because something has gotten miswritten in memory by the CPU. Okay, so memory is really, really important. Oh, I had a whole other slide there. And then we got the hard drive. Okay, it's permanent storage. Okay, but it's also referred to as secondary storage. It's permanent. Why would I call it secondary? Because it's the second place that the CPU would want to store to. Okay? CPU's primary storage is memory. It doesn't like the hard drive. It's slow. It's Grandma Moses. It's moving down the road at the speed of a snail, right? And then the CPU is like, I'm way too fast for you. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Oh, crap. I got to talk to the hard drive. Oh, okay. Here's your stuff. Okay? CPU doesn't like the hard drive. It likes memory, and memory's even slow. It's like, okay, you're faster than the hard drive. I'll talk to you because I got to talk to somebody, right? So, but the CPU doesn't want to talk to the hard drive. That's why it's secondary storage. But it's permanent. When I turn off the PC, everything that I saved there is still there. Okay? The faster the hard drive, the better our system will run, because when the CPU does have to talk to it, it wants to talk to it fast. Okay? This is an old hard drive. Fortunately, we still have a bunch of them in the school that we're slowly replacing. Okay? And we're going to learn about the different kind of hard drives and hard drive connections, and I can tell you it's old. It's got these 40 pins in the back here, as opposed to the new SATA connection here that's much faster. This kind of hard drive is at minimum twice as fast as that. At minimum. Okay? And it can be way, way, way faster than that. Okay? But it's at least twice as fast, twice as good, right? If your car was twice as slow, you'd be like, my car stinks. Okay? And that's what this car is. It's twice as slow. Or slower. Could be 10 times slower. Okay? It's at least twice as slow as the newer kinds of hard drive. So we got our hard drive. It's important. Okay. What do we keep? What's the biggest thing we keep on hard drive? The most important thing that we keep on the hard drive?
Software.
Okay, it is software. Yes. What software? What's the most important software on the hard drive?
Like Microsoft or.
Okay, and that's called the operating system, right? Without question, the most important piece of software on the hard drive. If we don't have an operating system, will our computer work?
No.
Absolutely not. We'll have a pretty block of nothing. Okay, right now that laptop right there is a pretty block of nothing. Okay, the operating system did not write to it, so it won't do nothing. Okay, without the operating system, a computer will do nothing. So we have to have an operating system. And you got, what kind of operating systems do we have out there?
We have Windows.
Okay, we have Windows. What Windows do we have?
Windows 7.
We have XP. We have 7. Are there any other Windows out there?
Yeah, there's Windows 8.
Okay, there's 8. There's Vista.
Windows 98.
There was 98.
I thought you meant the ones we had.
No, I'm just saying, let's name some Windows operating systems.
Well, that's not one.
What else do we have? There was 95. There was 2000. There was NT. There was 3.1. There's 2008. There was 2003. There's 2003 R2. 2008, R2. Any other ones? Did I miss any from Windows?
Not sure.
Okay, there was DOS. That's stand for Disk Operating System. Okay, you weren't alive when DOS was around. Okay, that's just from Windows. Who else makes operating system?
Mac.
Mac? Macintosh makes lots of, or Apple. And they make ones called OS something. OS X, so what do they give neat names to them, like Cheetah, Tiger, whatever. Okay. I don't know the Mac operating system, sorry. Don't know all the names of them. But Mac made them. There's also a company called, well, not really a company, a version of an operating system called Linux, which was made by somebody called Linus Torvalds, who took Unix to make a personal computer operating system, and he called it Linux. Okay, thousands, millions of people around the world help develop Linux. It's free, it's open source, you can download it now and put it on your PC, and you're going to do that this year. You're going to play with Linux a little bit. The PCs right now are dual boot, but we'll make the other ones dual boot too, so that you can get on and try Linux operating system. Linux is awesome. Our Boodle server runs on Linux. Our other web servers run on Linux. I use Linux for a lot of stuff here, server-wise, and we could definitely put it on PCs. At one point we thought about it because it would save us money because it comes with Office and everything for free on one disk. So if you have an old PC and you're like, this one's not running great anymore, I wonder if I could just make this a schoolwork PC, and you don't have a copy of Office, and you don't have a copy of Windows, you can go get Linux. Download it for free. I got tons of disks. I give you one. It's all on your PC, and it would run better than it's ever run, probably. Okay, for older stuff, it runs much better because it's much thinner and takes up less of your hard drive. So hard drives hold operating systems. What else do they hold? Other data and I'm going to say programs. Okay, there's other programs. The operating system only serves to give us a window into that PC to get to the other programs. Microsoft costs a whole lot of money just to make our hardware that we already bought work so we can get to programs that we have to buy separately. Okay? The Microsoft operating system is way overpriced, in my opinion. Okay? Because, I mean, some of them, oh my gosh, some of them are really, really expensive. If you go out and buy Windows 8 Premium, you're going to pay $300. $300 just to make it come on so I can buy all the programs to put on it, right? So sometimes operating systems are overpriced, in my opinion. But that operating system lets us get to other programs and save data. I can get to Office, which is, again, another how many $100 if you buy Office on your own. Luckily, we have a Microsoft agreement that's really, really inexpensive for the school that provides all the operating systems and all the Office stuff at a really, really low cost. I mean, really, really low. I'm not a leaser, but we switched to it last year. But I got other data and programs, okay, that are stored on that hard drive. And the faster I can load those programs, the faster the hard drive is, the better my PC works. When we learn about all the different parts of the PC, this is an easy upgrade. Memory is the easiest upgrade. Motherboards and CPUs aren't easy upgrades. That's like replacing the whole computer. You know, it's also the least inexpensive one. The most expensive one would be to replace my motherboard and my CPU. But replacing my hard drive, replacing my memory, and upgrading that may be an easy upgrade that if you've got a PC at home that's just running a little sluggish, you fix that really cheaply. We just upgraded all the hard drives all the teacher hard drives in the school this year to solid state drives. Okay, so we've got different kind of drives out there. Some of them spin. Most of them spin. Okay, at very high speeds. These are server speeds, really. But most of your hard drives spin at 5,400 revolutions per minute or 7,200 revolutions per minute. Is this faster than this?
Yeah.
Yeah, the faster it spins, the faster, theoretically, it can get data off the hard drive. Okay? So if you've got a faster drive, it can access it and load it to the CPU faster. And our new ones are called Solid state drives, there's nothing moving on them at all. They're big, huge packs of memory shoved inside a little tiny container. Okay? All the SSDs are the size of laptop hard drives. And when we look at hard drives, this is a desktop hard drive, standard 3.5 inches wide, and a laptop hard drive is much smaller. It's 2.5 inches. Okay? And solid state drives are all this size. You have to put a bracket in to put them into a computer with this because they're all nice and small and compact. Moodle runs on a solid state drive that's 500 gigabytes. It's all memory packed in that little tiny container. Okay? And they run way faster than these because there's nothing spinning. The CPU says, I need some, okay, here. I need some, here. Okay, gives it to it so fast it's crazy because it's really just more memory, but it's different, written differently, so it's permanent. So we have those kinds of drives in the school. Every single teacher's computer has a solid state drive in it, and most of the laptops have solid state drives in them now. That's why they appear to load so much faster. They don't appear to, they do load so much faster because it goes to load the operating system and goes bonk. Okay, when I take this M255, okay, it's got a 5400 speed traditional SATA hard drive like this one, okay? And for it to start and get all the way to where I'm ready to go, takes 3.5 minutes between when I push the power button and I'm ready to get on. I put a solid state drive in it, it's 35 seconds. It's a pretty severe change. Now, if you were using it as your personal PC and you've got it on most of the time, that's not that big of a deal. I waste 2.5 minutes. But what about when it's in school use, where it's getting turned on and turned off and turned on and turned off, and you've got to go get it out. Now you got to wait for it. Okay, we had these Vortex, those black ones right there. It took 10 minutes to log on when I first got here. How long is your class? Do you have 10 minutes? I mean, that doesn't even count the time that it takes for you to go get them out of the carts and sit down with them. So 15 minutes of my class at least is wasted before you're even logged on. Zowie. That's stinky, right? So solid state drives allow at least faster boot times, and in many cases the programs start up faster. And once the program started up, it doesn't go any faster. Why? Because where's the program at? CPU loads a program, and who does CPU play with? Memory. Okay, once it's off the hard drive, CPU doesn't talk to hard drive if it doesn't have to, right? It loads it into memory. And now it's going the same speed because that faster hard drive doesn't do anything once it's loaded up. Once I've started Microsoft Office, and Microsoft Office doesn't go any faster. Is that the end of this class? Yeah. Man! I didn't get halfway through. That's why I wanted to do it yesterday.